All right, guys, welcome to Beard of Darkness Book Reviews. Oh my goodness, I'm so excited today. I don't get to do very many daytime interviews, so when I do get my UK crowd, it's always fun. I'm so happy to be here. How are you, LL MacRae?
I am brilliant. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the earlier stream because I can't catch most of your interviews because I go to bed at 9 o'clock here. So it's really awesome to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation. And yeah, I'm feeling good, feeling excited.
Awesome. So many people. I've been in the community now for going on a year, I would say, so not very long. And you were one of the first authors that I found myself being interested in. The cover for the Iron Crown is just so cool. It captivated my eye. So you've been on my radar for quite some time. And I'm so glad you're here to talk about what you do, because I think you do it really well. And in the community, people have such positive things to say about your books and your writing style. So just been really excited to have you on the channel.
Yay.
No pressure at all. It's absolutely it's I think one of the coolest things, and I say this probably so much that it's annoying, but the community, the sense of community within the writing realm, if you will. Do you have that similar experience where everybody's just so kind and giving and supportive?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think that's why we stick around, because it's hard doing what we do and having that that support and encouragement. Like if you're having an off day, if you feel like you can't do it, imposter syndrome, that kind of thing. There is hundreds of people that are like, no, you can do this. We love what you do. We're here to support you. And that feeling is just, you can't put a price on that. It's wonderful. And yeah, you do have bad eggs occasionally, but the majority is really positive. We're here because we love escaping into other worlds. So to be able to share that with readers as well, like as an indie author, we can do that a lot more. I feel like a real part of the community, and I don't feel like I'm different because I wrote some of the words, kind of thing.
Right.
Definite real feeling of camaraderie as well. Yeah.
So you've written a number of pieces. So I'm going to try to kind of group these up, or actually I'm going to ask you to kind of group them up and to talk about the series that you're writing in and that you've written in. And then we'll go into your anthologies next. So main series, what are the main series that you've written?
Okay, so I have 17 books that I've published.
It's impressive.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know, I have a writing bug, I just can't stop. So I have a few series. World of Lunaria is my debut series. It's epic fantasy. That's the one with dragons, airships, and sky pirates. I have book one here. This is called Marauder. There's 4 books out so far, plus 1 novella. And there is also a companion guide. So some people have seen this. This is full of commissioned artwork. This has got character biographies, artwork, information about the world, just to bring it to life a bit more.
Yes.
I wrote it, so I count it. That's a book that I've done, right? Even though it's
for sure.
So yeah, that's all the lore and, kind of like my Silmarillion, I guess, but just really small. And then I have my latest epic series, which is the Dragon Spirit series. You mentioned seeing the cover of the Iron Crown.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So beautiful.
Thank you. I have book 1 here. I also have book 2 here as well. Shadowgate, which came out this year. There's a novella in that too, called The Citrine Key. And there's 1 more book to go in that series. I then have an urban fantasy series, which not a lot of people know about. I wrote it under a pen name, technically. 4 novels and a novella too. But it's kind of like the black sheep. I never talk about it. I don't want to say it's bad, but it's just not in the same vein as my other works, I guess. So I just don't ever talk about it.
Okay. Was it like a stepping stone for you?
Yeah.
Was it where you started? Was it a starting point?
No. So I started with Marauder back in 2017. That's when I published that. And then I published books 2 and 3 and the novella. And then I was kind of getting bored of that world and I wanted to move on to something else, but I didn't feel like I was at a good enough point to try something else yet. So I basically just wrote this short urban fantasy series like demon hunters in an alternate London. There's shapeshifters and elementals and genies and all that kind of really fun stuff, just to kind of get it out there. And each book was like 70 or 80,000 words. So by the time I was done with that, I'd sort of leveled up my writing to kind of, gamer speak. And then I moved on to the Dragon Spirits after that. And I never spoke about it again, pretty much. Yeah, it was just an idea I'd had knocking around for a while. I'd just been made redundant from my copywriting job, and I was doing the author thing full time as well. So I wanted to like kickstart my, I'm doing this full time now, by getting writing speed up, getting some more books out there, and just kind of improving. That was my goal with it. So yeah.
With the Dragon Spirits series, how many books do you plan to have in that series?
So that will be a trilogy. So 3 main novels. We've got 1 more to go. There is a novella out. I might do some more novellas or some spin-off short stories or something like that, because I do like the world. But as far as like the main series, it's just going to be 3 novels. Yeah,
that's cool. That's I think one of the coolest things that I've come to find a lot of authors doing, and something as a reader I really appreciate and love, is our novellas.
Yes.
You get a sense of an author's prose, whether you're not dedicating to a 250,000 word book. So I think they're really useful as far as an author and a reader goes. The first one I read, which I'm probably like so many other people, was The Fall by Ryan Cahill. And that was my first experience with a novella, and it was such a good one. I'll always read novellas forever. I'm always looking. It's like a quick punch,
Yeah.
And I think that that's a skill in itself. Writing a long book is this set of skills, but then getting a point across in a really awesome way and really attracting a reader sometimes through a novella is another skill set totally. You find it harder to write a longer book or a shorter book?
I find writing shorter much harder, like so much harder. With epic, you kind of are expected to spend, tens of thousands of words on world building and a cast of characters and all that, kind of building a system and what have you. Novella, you have to deliver that emotional punch in like a fraction of the space and make people care and make them understand the stakes and everything in a really short space of time. So I find that really difficult. And I used to have the kind of, not the wrong mindset, but I just kind of misjudge things, because I would be like, okay, it takes me so many hours to write so many words, therefore it will take me 2 days to write a short story. And it's really not the case, because you have to do the entire amount of emotional arcs and everything in that smaller amount of page space. So it's not really a case of fewer words, easier to write. It's making them so much more impactful, and that can take longer sometimes.
And also, like, without doing like what they call an info dump, where you're just so overwhelmed, right? So there's that fine line.
Yeah, it's a real skill. Like anything, you get better at it with practice. I mean, I was a copywriter before I went full time as an author, so I'm really used to writing something and being told, yeah, this is great, absolutely perfect. Can we have it in like half the word count, please? So like I have like experience of trying to just strip down to the basics. But it's not easy. It really isn't. And I do struggle with that a lot.
What for those who may not know, and I just recently found out, so this is really useful. What exactly does a copywriter do?
So it depends what kind of copywriter. In the US, it tends to mean like direct sales more than not. So, if you're browsing for a product of some kind and you end up reading like a really long sales page of, this is your problem, do you want to fix this problem? We know exactly how we can do that for you. And it'll kind of feed you through until by the time you get to the bottom of the page, you're like, yes, sign me up, I want this thing. So I did a bit of that, but I mostly did a lot of content. So I would do websites, email, like welcome chains. I would do product copy. I would do direct messaging. So the leaflets you get through your letterbox, I would do scripts, video scripts, everything. I work for a creative agency, so we would do different kinds of copy. Anything that a marketing or a sales team of a company writes is basically what a copywriter would also write, with the idea of, selling something as the end goal, or getting you to do something at least, even if it's sign up to a mailing list or some sort of a program, get a trial, buy a product, whatever it might be.
That's really cool. So I had a very vague idea of what a copywriter was, because you just expanded that for me. That's really cool. And do you feel that being a copywriter helped you in a lot of ways as far as going to writing novels? Novels?
Yeah, I think so, because you kind of, when you're a copywriter, the first thing that you have to think about is who's going to be reading this. Is it housewives? Is it working people? Is it people in university? What's your audience? And then you can tweak your copy to, be more relevant to those people. So when you're writing a novel, it's kind of the same thing, in as much as I want you, the reader, to feel this emotion, or I want you to pick up on this foreshadowing, or feel a certain way about a character or an environment. So I guess that, there's some crossover with a skill, definitely. I can just do it my way rather than the client's way, which makes it infinitely more fun. Plus, I'm writing about dragons and not like medicine and software. So yeah,
exactly. That is so cool. I really find that interesting. One other thing too is how you spoke on how being an author is your full-time gig now. Congratulations. That is absolutely wonderful. I've heard so many people say that is their goal on this channel, and goodness gracious, I hope everybody that wants to do that can, but sometimes that's not the reality. So congrats for that. Was that a goal of yours that you've had for quite a while?
Kind of, yeah. I just wanted to do my own thing, for sure. I think a lot of people, if asked the question, would say, yeah, I want to do my own thing. The reality isn't quite as rosy as I thought it would be. I work so much harder now than I ever did before. At least with my previous job, come 6 o'clock, I can switch off. I don't need to think about it. I don't need to check those emails until the following Monday. And if I can't do something, there's someone else on the team to help, or, whatever it might be. Whereas this, it's like all on you all the time. You don't switch off, like, ever. I wish I could, but I can't. But yeah, I kind of always wanted to do that, especially when you have jobs that maybe, I don't know, suck the joy out of life somewhat, I guess. Yeah. So yeah, it was nice. And it's like, it sounds really rosy, but I was made redundant and I basically just didn't look for another job. So it was thrust upon me and I just ran with it. So it wasn't exactly as I would have liked it to be. It wasn't like I'm like, right, on this day, this is when I'm going to hand in my notice. This is what I have lined up. It was very much like, this is the situation I'm in. Do we want to take the chance now? Or do we want to maybe put that back for a year or 2 or 3? So,
and that had to have been a little frightening.
Yeah, it was horrible.
I bet. I can just imagine having that. It's like you're at a fork in the road, and you have to kind of make this decision on what to do. So really look up and respect your decision, and I think that's wonderful.
Thank you. I do have support. Like, my other half is brilliant. He was there. Like, he's also a bit of a safety net too. So it was a leap of faith, but it wasn't into the void, if that makes sense.
It does.
There was, a part I could jump on if I kind of got everything sort of right.
Well, that's wonderful. I absolutely love hearing those type stories, because we're all human, and really that speaks directly to the human in all of us, having to make those big decisions in life.
Yeah.
So I also wanted to touch on the weight. This isn't the first time I've heard somebody say that when they went to being a full-time author, it really got maybe a little more scary, because it was Ryan that I was talking to, Ryan Cahill, and he's like, man, the first book and the success, you're riding it, and he's loving it, and he still loves it. But I remember him really going kind of deep into, now this is puts food on my table. This is what pays the bills, and that's an extensive amount of weight. So there's 2 sides of the coin for everything, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And before, yes, you're tired when you write because you're writing around your job or around, family and other requirements, so maybe an hour in the evening, maybe give up a weekend for it. And that's kind of it, which is hard, but you can kind of do it. Whereas when it's all you can do, it's that pressure it's so much sharper. Because then it's not just I can write when I fancy it. It's no, you have to write even when you don't fancy it. And when you start to get a little bit of success, it's no longer I'm just sitting and writing. It's all of the other things, the book tours, the marketing, the ads, the commissioning artwork, all of that kind of takes away from time you would spend writing. And then you feel kind of guilty that you're not spending all of your time writing, and then you're too tired. So it's kind of like it's almost cyclical, and you have to be really good at being able to get that balance to cope with the pressure and the risk that your next book might not do that well. And then what are you going to do? And kind of being able to have a thick enough skin to get through that, because it's a dream, but it's so much hard work.
There's a reality to dreams.
There is, yeah. And you kind of don't always realize that. With any big life-changing decision, there's always two sides to it, which you may not even realize until you're in it. And then it's like, well, what do? You've been at that fork in the road. You've made your decision. Are you going to stick with it? And how are you going to do that? And adapting as time goes on.
Well, thank you for touching on that, because I think it's brave to talk about that kind of thing. And I think a lot of people can relate with you. So I appreciate you sharing that with us.
Yeah, cool. Yeah.
Ryan Skeffington, he's an indie author as well, and he has a great question. He says, has your new releases assisted in selling your older work?
Yeah, I do. I do get a spike every time I have a new release. And I also link to my older work at the back of the new books. So the idea being, if you were to read it and you really liked it, you would then go and check out the other series. In terms of popularity, my older stuff is nowhere near as popular as my newer stuff. I think it's different vibes. I'm just a better writer now. There are still some diehard fans, for which I'm forever grateful. But that's not going to be paying the bills as much as the newer stuff is. But I do absolutely see a spike. I do see a crossover. And it's really nice when I see people really liking the new stuff and then also liking the old stuff too. I'm like, yeah, that was pretty good. I can be proud of that.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
I think as somebody who wants to have that experience, getting that person to message you or leave a review, whatever the message is, or however they tell you this, reading somebody enjoys what you enjoy or you put your heart and soul into, that's got to be pretty rewarding, right?
It really is, especially because I don't know if this is true of all authors. I think it's true for the majority, and it's definitely true for me. But when I look back at my older stuff, all I see are the flaws. All I see are the things I want to fix, which is partly why I rewrote Marauder. Don't do that, please. If you take one thing from this, don't rewrite your old work.
Okay.
But when I look back, all I see is, oh no, this is bad. I'm so much better at this now. Oh, I would have done this differently. And then you still see people enjoying it anyway, in spite of that. And I'm like, oh, okay, no, it's you get the butterflies again. And that's really nice. So you can see where your weaknesses are. You can see where you might want to change stuff, but you can still be proud of what you did because you did the best you could at the time, and that's good. That's okay. You're allowed to.
And really, that's a necessary part of the system or the process, that whether you're a welder or an illustrator, you have a starting point, and that's never going to be as good as you wish you started. And as you progress and learn your craft, you can look back and say, I've learned so much.
Yeah, for sure. 100%. And it can be very easy to see the negatives and think, oh, I'm not good enough. I'm not improving fast enough. I'm not as good as these other people. They're where I want to be. And kind of, and especially because, this is a sole kind of profession. You're the only one getting the words down. Yes, you work with editors and beta readers and teams of, hype people, I guess, but you're the only one that's putting pen to paper. So it can be really easy to just kind of withdraw into that and get caught up on the flaws or the room
being self-critical.
Yeah, very much so. So yeah, it can be very easy to do that. So kind of just taking a step back, looking at positive reviews, reading those messages, it can really help with lifting and motivating. Like you said at the beginning about the community as a whole, they're great for that too. Yeah.
That's awesome. I love that. And it's cool to hear your experience too, because I mean, 17 published books, you have a lot to teach people. I mean, and it's really why I started this channel. You've got, I mean, one of the questions that I ask the most is like, what part of being a self-pub author did you maybe not expect, or it kind of was just like a blindsided you? And I hear like marketing a lot. Is that true for you, or was there other aspects and kind of this? I had no idea I'd have to be good at this too, as well as writing.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, being a copywriter is kind of part of a marketing team. So I kind of had an idea of, you know, what companies from small to big kind of do and what you kind of would need to do as an author, especially self-pub, because I knew that as trad, you'd probably have to do it as well. So that's kind of why I went self-pub, because I knew I'd have to do all this stuff. I think I knew I had to do it. I do think I was not quite sure how much I would have to do it, because it's a full-time thing on its own. And I thought it would just be a couple hours every day, or, you know, one day a week or something like that. And it's a constant thing. And then added to that, how much is constantly changing that you have to adapt, and what worked for you one year won't work for you the next year, or even week to week. And then I think I didn't, kind of in a positive way, I didn't realize how many opportunities there would be for promotion, like things like this. Like people ask me to be like, oh, do you want to have a chat on my channel? And I'm like, what, me? Really?
Of course you.
Like, I'm allowed? So that kind of thing, I never really realized. I was just like, oh, only the big guys get to do guest posts and book tours and all of that. So I think I completely underestimated how much kind of like person-to-person contact I would be able to have, and how much I could kind of like grow in the community and like fan base and that kind of thing. I didn't really realize. I just assumed I'd be, you know, in my little hole writing, and then I might post something about it, and then I'd be back in my hole the whole time. And it's really not. It's a lonely profession, but it can be so much of like a community profession as well. And I definitely didn't realize that when I first started.
I think it was also like one of those things for me, even just doing what I do, it's like it's a pleasant surprise. So I was just kind of relating those same feelings that I had before, kind of the review and booktuber and like bookstagrammers and reviewers, bloggers. It really doesn't matter in which way you love fantasy or literature. You can always find that relation with so many people in that community. And it was a pleasant surprise to me, because I don't really know what I thought it would be, but I know. Can you still hear me?
I can hear you, yeah, but you're gone.
Okay. Oh, goodness. So, yeah, this has happened before. Sorry, guys. I forgot to plug my camera in. We'll still keep going, but I'm going to plug my camera in, and then you see me. My pretty face will be back soon.
Absolutely. We need it. It's the name of the channel.
Right. Sorry, guys. It'll be popped up here in just a moment. But while that's going on, tell us about the anthologies you've been a part of, and maybe like how they came into fruition. Like, how did they start? Was it your idea? Did somebody ask you?
Yeah. So kind of literally just feeding on from what I've just said about opportunities coming along. Basically, both of these anthologies were the same thing. So I've been in SPIFBO or SPFBO a couple times with both Marauder and Iron Crown. And Iron Crown was a finalist, and that put me in a group with 9 other authors, and we kind of formed a mini community, I guess, because we were going through the same thing. And one of the other finalists, Holly, who writes as H.L. Tinsley, approached me and some other authors to say, hey, I've got this really cool idea of putting together like a horror anthology. Would you be interested? And for anyone who's read my stuff, you know I write fun, light-hearted escapism fantasy, like really hopeful, and definitely not horror in any sense of the word. So my initial response was, I'm super flattered, but I don't know if I'm right for this particular project, if it's, you know, super dark and scary, because I don't do that. I'm a coward. And then Holly said, oh no, it's dark fantasy and horror, and it's totally open to interpretation, which if you've read the anthology, you know there's a huge spectrum of different feelings,
Yes.
emotions and vibes, because we could approach it from wherever we were most comfortable. So basically, despite me thinking I'm not good enough or I don't write in the right kind of genre, I was like, yeah, why not? It's an opportunity. I'll take it and we'll see what happens. You know, I can always bow out if I'm really out of my depth. So that's kind of how it started. It was Holly's brainchild. She got together with P.L. Stewart, who's another wonderful author who also runs Page Chewing.
Yep.
Couldn't remember that for a second. And the two of them basically kind of got together this group of authors, explained the idea, and they kind of put the project together. It was a wonderful experience. As we were saying kind of before we went live, it's so outside of my comfort zone. It's so outside of the kind of thing I write. There's still kind of thematic crossovers. There's still like the idea of like overcoming fear, becoming a better person, kind of there's still good even if there's darkness in the world, that kind of thing. Sure. Covers all of my books, but the atmosphere and the emotion is so far away from my normal stuff. It might as well be on another planet.
It was something that I couldn't wait to chat with you about, because like I was telling you, that was my first experience reading your writing was through Bone Collector. And what you captured for me was there's certain lines that you put in there that really just, I'll go through a couple of them. I wrote them down, and the father of the little girl, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. I don't want to spoil for anybody, but
yeah,
he says a lot. Look what you've made me do, which is so characteristic to like that really narcissistic, like awful person. And anytime that he said that to it captured something in me that I think was so perfect to go with like a horror themed fantasy anthology.
Yeah. So one of those lines where if you know, you know, and if you don't know, then you're horrified. So it kind of ticks both boxes.
Yeah, 100%. It was just incredible. So I wanted to let you know, well, I would say face to face, but my face is currently still loading to come up there. Sorry, guys. But I wanted to let you know I thoroughly was impressed throughout the whole story.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, I mean, like I said, I don't really write horror. I don't really write dark and scary stuff. So I think when I was told that, you know, it's open to your interpretation, I think I just went back to, okay, well, what makes me afraid? What do I fear? And kind of putting that on paper. So it was kind of cathartic to write and hard to write at the same time. Like I haven't looked at it since it's been published. And
oh, wow.
Yeah, the audiobook just came out. RJ Bailey narrated it, who's an amazing narrator. And normally you get to listen to it and say, can you change this, or this pronunciation is off, or, you know, whatever. And I was like, yeah, I don't want to listen to it. I trust you. It was kind of like one of those things where, you know, if you've got, you know, everyone is made up of dark and light in their experiences and what have you. And sometimes getting it out in written form helps you kind of deal with stuff. And that's very much true for me. Like I have to write to think about stuff. You know, you ask me, how do I spell a word? I can't tell you. I have to write it down and then I'll tell you. So I think
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's just the way my brain is. My brain is words. Like I can't, like if I'm having a difficult conversation, I have to write stuff down.
You're more of a visual person then.
I am a little bit, but not as much as the words. Like you know, I'll listen to a podcast and I'll be writing, and that'll help me process what I'm hearing in the podcast. If I just sit there in silence, it's going to go straight in that ear, straight out the other. I can't like absorb it. But I also I struggle like ADHD inattentive, and it's gone like out of sight, out of mind. So I have to note things down anyway to keep track of what's going on. Like even with my own books, I have copious amounts of notes. I don't really recall what's in any of my books unless I look at them and then I'm like, oh yeah, I remember writing that. But if I try and think about it, I
That's something that's so cool that you found out about yourself. You
Yeah.
know, one of those little things that you noticed helped you in situations and
Ah,
kept you from, you know, and I do it a lot too. In fact, when I first started listening to audiobooks, I just didn't retain anything.
yeah.
And now it's getting better. But at first I had to like kind of learn how to listen to it because it's not the same as reading a book.
No, it's really not. So I can't just sit and listen to an audio. I have to be doing something. So I learned to listen to audiobooks when
Mhm.
I was driving, when I used to have a commute to work, because I'm like, well, if the radio's on and someone's talking, I can kind of follow along. So maybe it'll be the same thing. So yeah, I learned driving, and I now listen on headphones if I'm like cooking or cleaning or, you know, just moving around the house. Sometimes I'll sit and I'll do a jigsaw puzzle, or I'll
Mhm.
just jot down notes about an idea while I'm listening, and that really helps. But yeah, just sitting and listening, I can't do it. Like, I'm in awe of people that can do that. It's like a superpower. It's great.
I I think a lot of people's I know there's a couple other booktubers that talk about how they just can't listen to audiobooks
Yeah,
because it just they don't retain the information. And
yeah,
I get that because I like you said, I had to learn how to listen to a book.
yeah. It sounds
Uh,
crazy.
no, it makes perfect sense. And those of us who struggled with it, it will make perfect sense to them.
Yeah.
And Isaac, another wonderful indie author, he has a good question. He says, how many books do you need in your backlog before you can make a living off of them?
I mean, it depends. Some people do it with one.
Mm,
How long is a piece of string, really? If you have 50 books that are making, you know, £20 a day, as is the 20 books to 50K, I think was like 20 books that make an amount a day, you could earn 50K. But if you have 1,000 books that make a fiver a day, you can do that. If you have one that makes 5,000, it really depends. There's no ballpark figure either. You have outliers who make it big with book number one,
mm.
and just continue to grow as they release more in the series. You have people who you would think are successful but make a very, very small amount on their entire backlog, and that all adds up. So yeah, it's no specific question. The more you have, the more chance you have, I guess, unless you have one of those kind of outlier books that just ticks every box for the majority of people and it just snowballs.
One of
But
those
that's,
things is going to be different for everybody else.
yeah,
Everybody's going to have a different answer for that.
for sure. Yeah, for sure. I mean, like for me, I didn't have enough really when I went full time. I was relying on my other half. I didn't have Iron Crown written, let alone released. So it took me a while to even get to a point where where it was self-sustaining, let alone earning enough. So yeah, it's
And
it's
and that
hard.
makes sense because you know, I think that kind of plays back to why another reason why I started a channel is because I knew I wanted to write. And sometimes when you're an author, if you haven't really gotten into the community and talked
Mm,
about what you're doing and you just drop a book, nobody's
yeah.
going to know about it. You're not going to have people who are wanting to support you. So I think that that's a really good point.
Mm.
Tim says, so you mentioned not to go back and rewrite a piece of work. His question is, so no to going back and revising, but what about expanding on a book? Have you ever done that?
Um, I guess not technically, if you mean something like writing a spin-off to an existing series, although I would like to do that. And I might do that for this Dragon Spirit series because it's quite popular in comparison. So expanding by going back and doing a spin-off series or a duology or even a standalone, absolutely, I would do that. And I think as long as you have some kind of internally consistent lore, either with the magic system or the world, why not? Or if you really want to change it, you can always do like what Michael J. Sullivan did with a whole prequel series that's, thousands of years before the main one. I don't see anything wrong with that. If you're having fun in the world, continue to play in it. If you've got people that want to read more, why not? Just, yeah, expand. It's also why I kind of write soft magic systems. So I'm less likely to write myself in a corner, and I can just evolve it without contradicting what's gone before.
That makes a lot of sense too. By the way, I'm a huge fan of the soft magic systems myself. To be honest, I don't have a whole lot of experience with a really hard magic system. The one that comes to mind is Brandon Sanderson,
Oh
just
yeah,
from hearing about it. I haven't read a lot of his novels, and I think it's because I don't want to not like Brandon's work, because I've read Elantris and I liked it. But as far as like categorizing and like having points and having that really hard magic system, maybe one day I'll read a book and be like, you know what, that changed my mind. But I really enjoy a softer magic system.
Definitely, yeah.
Christian R. Theodore says, how much does your story or stories dictate character growth? Do you evolve them away from the original plot?
I think I put my characters above the plot. I have like, so when I plot things out, I more have like important beats, you know, like point A, point B, point C. How the characters get there is not something that I kind of figure out in advance. It kind of the characters are kind of leading their own growth, so to speak. I know where they want to end up, but how they get there, it depends. If I'm writing and some part of character growth is a natural thing to happen next that I have not accounted for, I'm going to follow that because it's natural. It's what fits. And then I tend to like tweak the story around that. As long as it's not going to really impact the end goal. And if it does, then I probably need to go back and replot it. So yeah, my characters will definitely lead that. The way I kind of write, what I aim to write is more smaller scale, like more intimate stories within bigger epics. So I don't really do like chosen ones that are going to change the world and drive the plot and make all these big changes. I tend to do, there's a world and there's stuff happening and we are with these people, like everyday people, wrong place, wrong time. How do they cope? How do they make the best of what they have? What troubles do they have that they need to overcome to be a better version of themselves in whatever the world is? So yeah, it's what speaks to me. It's what I like to read. Like I'm really drilling down to what my reading's jams are and what I really like and why I like them. And then surprise, surprise, I can kind of see that in all of my books, even though I didn't ever write it with that in mind. It's just kind of what I naturally fell into.
It just happened naturally.
It did. Yeah, it did.
That's wonderful.
Like all along. Yeah. So yeah, I kind of, yeah, like I like world and places and things and vibes more than characters. I'm a bit weird like that. So I like the wonder of fantasy. I like the awe, the floating cities, the enchanted forests, the myth, the dragons, the magic, the that kind of like that whimsy. That's what I love, that escapism. So I tend to write characters that have cool stories within those places, rather than there is a prophecy and this person will return and save the world. It's more like, who would be really interesting living in this place? What would their story be? How did they live? And what actions can they take that will ripple out and affect the bigger thing? So it starts really small, like, you know, like a stone thrown into water, kind of. That sounds really kind of cringe now I'm saying it, but
no, it doesn't.
Yeah, that's
you're touching on something that I think is very helpful. I'm over here absorbing this. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I wanted to let you know that is the kind of intimate details as far as like you thinking about your characters and what role they're going to play.
Yeah,
I think that's wonderful. I've never really sat down to think about it in the way that you just put out, and I think that is going to be very helpful.
Yeah, it's different. It's less mainstream. You end up with less mainstream characters, which may or may not work for people. If you look at the big blockbusters, you know, like Avatar, where you've got Jake Sully, who's very overconfident and touching all the things and, you know, being really engaging and exploring. And a lot of people are like, yeah, do that. I'm like, no, do as you're told. Sit there and be quiet and do not touch stuff. And I'm like, who are you if you are going to sit down and be quiet? What is your story? Why are you there? And I find that almost more interesting as a reader than like the big gregarious main characters who go off and are very loud and rambunctious. So I'm a lot more attracted to the lesser told stories, the people that have stories that are just as important, but may not be what you would consider your main typical type of fantasy protagonist. Like I write epic fantasy, but not heroic fantasy, even though there's normally a lot of overlap, if that makes sense. Just because that's what I'm too, really. That's me. I'm the quiet, introvert, anxious, neurodiverse kid. So I want to know that I matter in stories, or people like me matter. So that's kind of my approach to
I
character.
totally look up to that in so many ways. I think that what I hear is you create characters that are much more relatable um, to more people, most people, I guess you would say, because not all of us are going to go change, like the chosen one you were talking about.
Yeah.
You know, what about those guys that you wouldn't hear about? What's cool about their story?
Yeah. Who's the guard that's guarding the prince, the silent guard, and what's his story? What's his family like? What are his goals? What traumas does he have? Like that kind of thing. But it can be very divisive. Like I don't in my Dragon Spirit series, there's one character who is like the Jake Sully, who is very confident and kind of cocky and silly, and a lot of people gravitate to him because it's almost like the expected norm. And I love him. He's great. He's just another like facet of me. And some of the other characters have got, you know, issues that they're trying to work through that may or may not be clear. It may or may not be annoying because you're just like, oh, come on, can you not just do the plot and save the world? And other people are like, where's the plot? You know, what I want to know, the big picture. I want to know about the queen who's in control. I want to know all these big powers. It's like, no, I'm telling this really like small person story because they're just
intimate story.
Yeah. And it's subjective. It's not better or worse than anything else. You know, heroic fantasy is amazingly popular and I love it. And so do millions of other people. But what I like about fantasy these days, especially indie fantasies, you get to see like the stories lesser told, and you get to see different ways of enjoying the genre. And I think it's really great to have more like variety, and like you can have that, oh my God, wonderful awe that you get with Lord of the Rings and Wheel of Time, and you can still get it with people, with other characters that you may not have thought about before.
For sure. I absolutely can relate with that because when I'm reading a character that I'm particularly interested in, I love the backstory, and it's usually not the main character.
Yes.
So I really relate to that.
Yeah. It's like the side characters is like, how did you get where you are? Like, what's your story? What's your, you know, secret family and, you know, knowledge? I love that so much.
I love it too. So this is almost a little bit selfish of me, but I'm still going to ask it because it's really, it's a pretty common question, but I'm going to really soak it in because I'm so curious.
Yeah.
Your writing style, you're in the writing mode. That's what you're trying to get this novel done, hypothetical novel. And do you have a day-to-day process? Kind of tell us about how you write your writing process.
So it kind of depends if I'm in writing mode or like editing mode or release mode or whatever it might be. But you said head down writing. So I used to be really, really fast until I rewrote Marauder, which was in 2021, I think. Yeah, 2021. And since then, I've really struggled to get back to that. So I think I've done something to my writing muscle. I don't know what, but I still write in the same sort of way. I might need to adjust. I use Pomodoro sprints, which if you haven't heard is like you write for a set amount of time, you have a break and then you write. And when you're writing, you are sprinting. You are trying to get as many words on the page as you can instead of sitting there and umming and ahhing over every sentence and description and what have you. And if you do hit a point where you're stuck, you just move on. Just write the next scene, the next paragraph, the next chapter, whatever it might be. So I tend to do from about 8 a.m. until about midday, 1 o'clock, depending on when I get hungry. I will do sprints. So 4 to 5 hours of sprints. And I get huge amounts of writing done in that time. I used to get about 10,000 words done in that amount of time.
Wow.
And I would do that for 3 or 4 days. And then I'd take a day or two off, and then 3 or 4 days, and then a day or two off. And then I would adjust the sprint time depending on how the writing is going. So I would normally do 25 minutes with a 5-minute break. But I don't know, I might want to make some tea. So I'll take a 10-minute break. I might need to take Boris out. I'll do a 20-minute break. I might want to have lunch. I'm really, really hungry that day. I'll take an hour break and then I'll go back to it. But I always try to get 4 or 5 hours combined of writing time done during the day. And then that's normally enough for me to feel like I've achieved something. Since rewriting Marauder, I have not been able to do that. I do about 5,000 to 8,000 words, and it's the entire day now. I don't know what, I've broken something in me. I don't know what. But I still have like a word target per day, which is a double-edged sword, because I need pressure to do it. And I want to like, it's like have a to-do list so I can tick things off and feel like I've achieved something.
Sure.
But then it's really bad if you have a bad day and you don't hit the target, and then you feel bad. And then you're like,
self-loathing starts.
Oh yeah, massive. We are our own worst critics, and I'm horrible to myself. Like, I'm really nice to everyone else because I save all the horribleness for myself. So I'm like, you know, you shouldn't be reading, you should be writing. You shouldn't be gaming, you should be writing. You know, that kind of talk, which is not good, and something I'm working on. But I definitely have, like, if not a set word count, a set amount of hours that I will spend on the drafting. Editing is a bit different, because I'm working with my editor, I'm working through their comments. I might need to add stuff, delete stuff, rewrite whatever's already there. So you can't really work to word counts in that point. I tend to then do like, I'll do 2 chapters a day and make and you know, get all of that amended and then move on. But the drafting is something that I'm like, get it done, because you can't edit a blank page. And even if it's rubbish, it can be tweaked. And even if you don't quite know where it's going, just get something down, because the writing of something will always spark an idea for something either beforehand you were stuck on, or something that's coming up that maybe you're not too sure about. So I kind of plot out rough guidelines so I know roughly where things are going. And then I kind of like organically write. And if, you know, like I said earlier about the character growth, if that goes in a different direction, if I get an idea and it goes in a different direction, I'll do that. And then, you know, so the plot is not a rigid structure, because I will probably get too bored. So yeah, it's intense periods of sprinting is how I get it done. And then working with my, you know, my editor, my beta readers to revise and polish it. Yeah.
So right now, the part in this journey that I'm at is I tried to pants. This guy is not a pantser, never will be. Not for me. I lose track. It's like I had to reread what I wrote the day before. And like once you're on page 400, you just can't reread everything you've written. And I've kind of found this spot in the middle where I'm like outlining like major events, even including like the ending, maybe some twists. And I think that's where I'm going to head with it. Not where everything's set in stone, but where I know the major events, and then getting there, I can use that creative freedom to get to where I thought I was going, or switch that up perhaps.
100%. Yeah, I think it's the best approach, because then you have a guideline, so you're not completely lost and you don't end up writing yourself into a corner. But then you allow yourself the freedom to, when that inspiration does hit, you can just go with it. And then quite often when I find I look back, the parts of the books that I pants wrote tend to be the most interesting, because that's when the inspiration is there, that's when the emotion is there, that's when you're feeling like it's just flowing and you're like, oh my God, yes, this is brilliant. And kind of it all kind of comes together. It's almost like your subconscious has just like done the hard work for you, and you're just putting it on page. And it's really fun and freeing. I'm just writing an entire novel like that is something that I would not be able to do.
I found myself confusing myself quite a bit. So plotting those big points, and my wife, she gave me an early Christmas present, and it's this book that she got, and it kind of helps you with your outline, and it's become really useful so far. And like I said, that's why I'm here. I love hearing about your process and other people's process, and your view on characters and plot and how you do things, because I take a little bit of that with every single person that I talk to. And so I appreciate it. Thank you for touching on those things.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I hope it helps.
Absolutely. There's questions in my mind a lot of times before that I didn't know were there. So when I hear something along the lines of plot or characters that perhaps you do or somebody else does that I'm talking to, it's like, you know, I didn't necessarily have the experience for that question to be made in my mind, but I know that it would have. So now I can kind of brush that out, you know. When I get to that point, I have a little bit of ammo, if you will.
Yeah, for sure. Like one thing I definitely try to pay attention to, more so in the revision, but definitely when I'm drafting, I like what I just call dopamine hits for the reader. So it could be conflict, it could be a reveal, it could be just something awesome happening, it could be bit of foreshadowing, you know, where someone would connect the dots if they're paying attention, you know, if there's a mystery, and trying to make sure that I have enough of those spread out, and certainly a few in each chapter and ending on each chapter, because you want them to finish the chapter and be like, oh wow, I need to know more, and keep, you know, that kind of that page turning sensation. You know, it's subjective, of course, doesn't work for every book, but it's definitely a thing that if I'm like, this chapter is missing something, I don't really know what, can't put my finger on it, it's probably some sort of dopamine hit is missing from somewhere. So I try and make sure that I always have those.
What's an example of that? A dopamine hit, like you're going through a chapter. What would you consider that to be?
It could be anything, depends on the chapter. It could be like a character reveal. It could be your main character learning something, so you get an ooh moment. Could be just a point of conflict if it's a slower chapter. You know, even I don't necessarily mean like epic dragon battle, although that would definitely be one, but it could be, you know, two characters locking heads on something, butting heads. It could be a reveal of stakes or a heightening of stakes, even in a small way. Even it could be a case of you've got a character walking from one point in the forest to another point. Okay, how do you make them more interesting? What if they get lost? What if something comes across their path? What if they find an ancient mysterious artifact? What if they're discovered by the enemy? What if they think they are discovered by like anything like that? And even better if it's world building, plot, character related, rather than just a thing for the sake of it. Because then you're doing your world building and your character building while also moving the story along. And so it kind of it does many things, and also making it just more interesting in general.
I really like that. Again, that's another thing that I, you know, just not having written a novel yet, that I just didn't have a question, you know, and it makes so much sense, because I like to read a chapter that's not like the last chapter, or it's like uninteresting. I think what you're saying, at least to me, is like you put these interesting points, and that makes the reader go, oh, okay, that's something new, or oh, this makes me feel this way all of a sudden, or that makes so much sense. It does.
Yeah, I think it's from copywriting, because you want to keep someone reading. Like if you've been reading a book or a page, and say you're not tired or you're not busy, you want to read, and your attention starts to drift. Why is that? Like, what caused that? And so when I'm rereading, or when I work with my beta readers, I'm like, at what point is your attention drifting? And then if there's enough of them, I can see there's a pattern. I'm like, right, something's missing here. Could be just the way I've written it. Doesn't necessarily mean I need to add something, but there's something that's causing the I need to keep reading that's not quite there. So it's just worth bearing in mind, for sure.
For sure, that makes so much sense to me. And it's such a good thing to kind of have that information before. I mean, you learned that you had these stepping stones, and you found that this process of keeping everything. I like what you said, the dopamine hits. That it totally makes so much sense now. Who are some authors that you were influenced by that may have their hands in the way that you write? Not exactly the way that you write, but who have influenced you over the years?
This is going to sound really awful, and please don't judge me. I've been asked variations of this question before, and my answer kind of remains the same. But I didn't really have any authors or any books. The thing that kind of like got me on this path of being a writer was a video game called Final Fantasy VII.
Wow.
Yeah. That introduced me to epic, sweeping narratives, casts of characters, side characters with their own backstories that interlink somehow. It introduced me to emotions writing, because if you've never played the game, it's all text-based. All the dialogue is text. it's just you read for hours and hours and hours while occasionally fighting.
Right.
That is what did it for me. That is the feelings that I know I want to invoke in people. Caring for side characters instead of them just being throwaways. That's the thing that did it for me. And even when I started writing novels and fiction, I didn't read that much, which is really annoying to say, and I feel horrific about it. Like, I've never even read Lord of the Rings, and I know it's really awful. But I think you can get stories from anywhere, and I think you can get wanting to get those emotions from anywhere, and that was kind of the big one for me, and that's the driving force for me. And
That
yeah, I know
that
it's
really no, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. The lag, sometimes I accidentally interrupt somebody. I didn't mean to do that.
no.
So what that tells me, or in fact, what it makes me feel is I need to. Of course, I love to read, but there's so many other topics and places to find your inspiration than just reading. That opens my mind a little more, because I think when you hear that somebody writes, you're like, oh, they just have been reading for so long, and that's just something that you think. I don't know. That's what I thought.
Yeah.
But kind of realizing that there's story and so many other things. Of course, I love to play video games. Of course, I played Final Fantasy VII, and I got a very similar experience as a book, like what you're saying. You have narrative, you have characters. So that's inspired me to look elsewhere, and maybe these other avenues that I'll check out will influence me, maybe perhaps better than a book.
Definitely, yeah. If it invokes emotion, take it. Like, and if you can narrow down why, then you can apply that to your writing. You obviously, it's not a visual media, but you can still have those same feelings. Like, if I'm writing about some massive dragon, okay, you might not be able to visualize it, but you know what it feels like to have rushing wind in your face. You know what it feels like to feel a searing heat when you open an oven. You can get those descriptions in the book of a thing that you've seen in a film or you've seen in a video game. You can do that. And it makes it for more dynamic writing, I think. Learn from everywhere. Absolutely.
Makes so much sense. And again, I guess I hadn't thought about it that way. And I'm so glad that I am now. I think that will do many things. I'll look for that in other places, and I think that will help.
Definitely.
So what this is an exciting question. I can't wait to hear. What are you working on currently, and what's next for you?
I know you just said it's an exciting question, and I'm really sorry if this is a disappointing answer. So I'm working on a secret project.
Okay.
It's a co-authored project. It's going to be released under a pen name, so I'm not actually going to be talking about it like on Twitter and Instagram and things like that, unless it does really, really well, in which case I will then talk about it. It's a thing we've been wanting to work on for a while. And we've basically been waiting for me to have a gap in my calendar to be able to do the writing. So that's taking up all of my writing headspace right now. We're writing the first 2 books back to back, hoping to release early next year. It's kind of fantasy adjacent. It's not really my normal thing. It's more of an experiment project. We'll see how it goes. But after those 2, I will be focusing on my Lunaria series and finishing that next year, 100%. I haven't had a new book in that series since 2021. And like I said earlier, it may not be as popular as like Dragon Spirits, but I still have like a small group of readers who really, really like it and would like for the series to be finished. And it'll be really fun to return to that, having written so many other things now, to see if that changes my approach. So finishing off Lunaria is like my next big project. And then finishing Dragon Spirits after that. Whether that will be 2024 or 2025, I'm not sure. But those are my 2 big things. And then following the popularity of the other anthology that I'm in, The Advent of Winter, which is my story there is set in a Patreon exclusive world that I haven't released publicly. I want to do more in that and potentially get it to a book form that I can release publicly, because the encouragement is really motivating. And, you know, you look back on it and you think, it's not that good. And then people are like, oh no, it really, really is good. And then you're like, oh, okay, I'll do more in that. So
you're listening to your readers.
Yeah, absolutely. I want you guys to be happy. You're the one who are spending money buying these things. So I can adjust my priorities a little bit. That's not a problem.
That was not a boring answer, by the way. That was a wonderful answer. So definitely not let down by that. You're working on things and you're following your passion, and that's what's exciting to me.
Yeah.
So what part of this journey of yours, being a writer, I know I skipped a couple and I'm going back up one now, sorry.
That's okay.
Has been the most fun? Where in this journey did you find yourself just having an absolute blast?
So I'm a little bit of a weird author. I'm a bit of topsy-turvy in my approach. So most authors sell lots of ebooks and then the occasional paperback. I sell a lot more paperbacks, and that's because I sell at events like Comic-Con. And going to Comic-Con and meeting people and chatting like we are now, but in a much smaller format, about books we love to read and games we love to play, and just fantasy and sci-fi as a whole has been by far the best thing, because you get to connect with your tribe, so to speak.
Sure.
They'll come along and say, oh, I've read this, what's yours like? And then you have a whole conversation about it, and then you're like, oh my god, you love Robin Hood too. I love Robin Hood. And you have those conversations. And some of them I genuinely do consider friends, not just people I met that one time. And that's been a really wonderful and big part of the experience, that I didn't realize when I first started, but by far the best. And then kind of similar to that, going to things like Fantasy Con, which is not a selling Comic-Con, but it's still, you get to meet your tribe there. Exactly the same thing, but other authors and book tubers, reviewers, bloggers, people in the community. Yeah,
that's amazing. And that's something I very much value myself, and something, when I first thought about doing this live thing, what we're doing right now, I was frightened. I'm like, I could never do that. And I find now that it's like, I love to talk to people about their experience and what we have in common, what I can learn from them, especially culture. Talking to people in the UK, talking to people in New Zealand or Australia or Argentina, wherever it may be, I never would have talked to or met these people if it wasn't for what I'm doing here. So again, I just kind of was relating with that experience with people. It's very eye-opening and refreshing.
Yeah, it really is. The internet has a lot of bad stuff on it, but it's amazing for bringing people together, making you feel less alone, opening doors, opening eyes. So yeah,
100%.
It's brilliant.
Who are a few people that you love personally and you may want to see me chat with in the future?
I mean, like, you already do so much for indies. Like my default answer is always other indie authors, but you do so much for that. But yeah, like, I have a soft spot for my fellow SPF 07 finalists. So Kirsten Espinosa Rosero, who is fantastic. Holly H.L. Tinsley is great. Tim Hardy as well, especially because he's wrapping up his Brotherhood of the Eagle series. Those three are phenomenal authors.
I haven't talked to either of them.
Have you not?
Nope, I haven't talked to any of the people that you just put out there. And oftentimes I get like repeat, which is wonderful. I plan on having everybody I've talked to back on the channel multiple times. So that's definitely a goal of mine. But I always love new people to find out their books and what they're doing. So I appreciate that. Could I ask you to repeat those three names again?
Yeah. So Kirsten Espinosa Rosero, who wrote Burn Red Skies. H.L. Tinsley, who wrote End of Ash and Shadow. And Tim Hardy, who wrote Hall of Bones. They've all written other books as well, but those are like the first in the main series.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And then, of course, let everybody know where they can follow you as far as social links and stuff, where you're active, and where to find your books.
So I'm mostly on Instagram and Twitter, or X, and Goodreads and various reader discords. But there's a link to everything. There's a link in my bio, which is on all of those, or my website, which is just llmacrae.com. And as I mentioned, I sell my paperbacks direct. I also sell my audiobooks and my ebooks direct, that you can buy them all on my website. So you can buy paperbacks, which are signed, lined, and dated. You can also get bundles. So you know how if you buy the ebook on Amazon, you can get the audio for like half price or something?
Yep.
You can do the same thing on my website. So if you don't want to support Amazon, you can get them directly from there. There's also a mailing list you can sign up for, and you can get my 2 novellas free just for signing up if you want to check out the writing for the series, see what you think.
That's awesome. So the name of the website, which, like you said, LL MacRae, is just down here at the bottom on the ticker. And then I took your link tree. I put that bad boy in the description. That should have everything for you under that.
Yes. So that also has like Comic-Cons I'm going to. It's got links to the various books. It's got a link to my website, social media. Anything exciting that I have coming up, I'll pop on there as well.
Awesome. So guys, like I said, that's in the description. And last, I would just like to take this opportunity to say I've really been looking forward to chatting with you, and this has been a blast. And I really wanted to thank you for letting me borrow your mind for a little bit.
No, thank you for the invitation. I'm always shocked when people are like, would you like to come and talk to me? I'm like, really?
Yeah.
No, thank you for the opportunity. It's been fun. I was really nervous, and I didn't need to be, because you're really good at this.
Oh, well, thank you.
And I've really enjoyed watching your interviews up until now. So yeah, it was great to be part of that. So thank you.
Absolutely. And thank you for those kind words. So thank you guys for tuning in and watching live. Thank you for letting me borrow you, LL MacRae. And for you guys that will watch in the future, thank you as well. I'm going to go actually pick my son up from the babysitter and go on with the day. So I hope you have a wonderful rest of your evening. And until next time, we'll see you guys.
Thank you.